What is the family, right? Okay, so the Western family, the way we see it is a Western family starts when mom and dad come together and they form a new family, right? That's how we think about it. Like when you're married, you got in-laws, that's sort of unfortunate part of the package, but you're really a new family, right? Okay, so then from there, your job is to create a springboard for the individual success of your children, and your ability to succeed is really, as a father, determined primarily by how well your kids launch, right? And so then, boom, your kids are gone. You got one or two kids, and then they're out, and woo, all right, we did our job. Oh yeah, high five. Let's go move on to the next thing, our golden years or whatever, right? That's how we think. That's sort of the story we tell ourselves, and also, and this family has about an 80-year memory. That's why we don't know the names of our great-grandparents, because the memory of a family like this, you can see it's sort of a structure that's basically in 2 generations at the most, right? And then the dad leaves, so that's a big part of this. So one of the unfortunate parts of this structure is that a lot of men don't like this. This is actually a fairly maternal idea of family, right? Because you're basically building something that's going to self-destruct in 20 years, and you know it. I don't know about you. I don't really like to build things that I know are going to self-destruct. I sort of prefer to now, women, they're a little bit more invested in, thank God, God made women to even if this is going to blow up in 20 years, that's my son, that's my daughter. I have a heart bond connected. They grew in my womb. There's a connection. But as dads, we're more visionary. And so just to basically be pitched a vision that, hey, why don't you sit on a nest that basically is designed to self-destruct, but do your best. I'm like, I got better things to do, honestly. There's things that just, to me, I can invest in that feel much more long-term, much more lasting, much more, ultimately influential. And so, again, this is why we don't focus on the family. There's a lot, this is a very broken idea of family, and it's uniquely difficult for men to connect with. Okay, how did Abraham see family? And this is not just Abraham, by the way, you guys. Our idea of family, the one that I'm articulating that's Western, this is very recent. If you look at history, it's about 150 years old. If you go around the world, ancient cultures do not think the way we think about family. And even in America, we didn't think this way. This is a new idea. We're experimenting with a new idea of family. The problem is the experiment started before any of us were born. And so this is all we've ever known. This is the water we're swimming in. But it's still an experiment. So how did Abraham see it? How do classical families see family? Well, the thing that they think about family is a family comes into existence when a patriarch casts a vision, right? So what happens is if you ever ask somebody in this kind of family, tell me the family story, it's always going to root back to a particular generation, a patriarch, matriarch generation. They'll usually be able to name the person, and they'll say, okay, this whole thing started when my great-great-great-grandfather decided we're going to buy this land, we're going to start this business, we're going to move to this country, we're going to worship this God. Something changed, and a new vision was cast for the family, and that patriarch founded a new family line, right? And this is what you see in the Bible. The Bible says that we worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But Abraham had a father, right? Terah. So why don't we worship the God of Terah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Well, the reason is because we find out at the end of Joshua that Terah was an idol worshiper. And so God told Abraham, leave your family and start a new family line. And that's what he did. He didn't tell that to Isaac. Didn't tell Isaac to leave his family because he was carrying on the vision of the patriarch Abraham. And he himself became a patriarch of the family, as did Jacob, right? And so they were founding a new family that was separate from the line of Terah because there was a patriarch with a new vision. And so some of you guys sitting here are Abraham and Sarah generations, and some of you are Isaac and Rebekah generations, which is great, right? Abraham and Sarah generations is I am founding a new family line starting with me. I have separated myself from the previous line. Let's say you're the first generation to follow the Lord. Then you're an Abraham and Sarah generation. And there's a huge special blessing given to Abraham and Sarah. And this whole conversation around Abraham, you have to understand, he was, of course, in the same situation you're in. Now, some of you guys are Isaac and Rebekah generations. You are really building on the vision of previous generations. One of the hard things, though, in our culture is that a lot of times we don't actually feel or understand or appreciate that connection. Even our fathers don't. even if they have pitched a vision, they don't really understand what kind of thing we're creating. Is our families designed to be these nuclear, fragile families, or did God design families to be multi-generational in nature? So Abraham started this. Now, what happens to the classical family is a whole series of generations will emerge in order to accomplish the vision of the patriarch. And so generation after generation after generation begins to go after that vision. And if that vision is ever accomplished, we call that a legacy, right? And so oftentimes the original visionary patriarch doesn't see the fruit of their legacy. The legacy only occurs if some subsequent generation actually achieves the vision of the father. And if you've ever talked to somebody from a family like this, it's really remarkable. These families still exist. They're extremely powerful, right? They're ruling so many of our businesses. They're ruling a lot of our political system, but they're probably less than 1% of the families in our country. And this is one of the tragedies of Christians adopting a fragile Western idea of family that's essentially unbiblical, because we are handing over our culture to other multi-generational families that are not Christian, that are not worshiping the Lord. That's an exceptionally dangerous thing to do. This is why we need to stir this up in this room. And I love the vision of this whole facility, because I'm like, this is exactly what's needed. Like, we need to stop this. Stop building these fragile nuclear nests. They don't work. They fall apart. And they hand the leadership and vision of our entire city over to people who do not have a kingdom vision. Like, we desperately need this. Okay, so this legacy. Now, one of the things that's fascinating about a family like this is they tend to have 1,000+ year memory. And this is oftentimes when you know if you're actually a part of a multi-generational family. I was having a conversation with an investment banker about this whole topic, and he said, Jeremy, the more you talk about this, I feel like I've talked to somebody who had a very similar vision. Can I connect you? And this is during COVID, and so we got on a Zoom call. And so I was talking to the gentleman. He was he was Korean. And I said to him, he's a very successful businessman. And I said, I'd love to hear about your family. He's like, he kept on bringing the conversation back to his business, back to his business, back to his business. I finally, I stopped him 3 times, hey, I really want to hear about your family. He's like, he literally, by the 3rd time, he's like, I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time understanding what you're asking me. Nobody's ever asked me about my family. I'm like, no. I'm trying to understand the nature of family. I heard you come from a multi-generational family. Can you explain that to me? Because I'm looking to study this, and I'm trying to understand it better. And I heard that you come from a multi-generational family. He's like, well, yeah. Sure, I can tell you about that. So my name means the 30th. I'm the 30th generation of my family line. My son, his name means 31st. He's the 31st generation. Me and my son, we and every person from our family line, we memorized the names all the way back to the 1st generation. And our family started 1,000 years ago when our patriarch was a part of a battle. He was a general in the Korean army, and he served the king really well. And he, because he accomplished what the king wanted him to do, he was granted land. And every year, me and thousands of my descendants go back to the land to celebrate the whole history of our family. And so the more he was talking, he was getting more and more excited. And then he literally grabs this book off the shelf in the back, and he opens up, and he's like, this is my entire family tree going back 1,000 years. And so he was just showing me this thing. Again, you guys, these families exist. Right now, in this room, you could decide to start a family like this. But you have to decide to do it. Because if you keep going, if you keep building this, you'll never get this. And this is what's killing us in the kingdom. The fact that we keep building these nuclear nests instead of building multi-generational family teams. And particularly, if you own a business or you begin to build assets, it becomes really a lot easier to begin to move your family in this direction. So this is part of the reason why a lot of our coaching, we try to figure out what are all the tools that begin to create multi-generational family teams. And that's what we want to keep sowing into you guys. What are those tools? We want to just load you guys up with those tools. But first of all, you have to decide to build this kind of family, because if you decide to keep building a nest, you're not going to get these results, because those nests, they have a certain architecture, and they are designed, like I said, to self-destruct. And so they're not going to get us there.